Hello and welcome to the Just Mates podcast, where we aim to destigmatise men not speaking up about mental health. Remember to follow our social pages on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter at Just Mates Pod. You can listen to and subscribe to our podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Anchor and Apple Podcast. All links are provided in the description. In today's episode, we're going to be discussing passing away. So yeah, I think it was a better term to use rather than death, weren't it, Sam?
Yeah, we can't plaster death all over social media. We'll probably get locked up on like Friday.
But yeah, I think it's just a more, sensitive approach.
Yeah, it's like every topic we discuss. It's going to be a sensitive topic for someone at least listening.
Yeah.
I've had my death anxiety. You and me have had. I guess we both had like relatives to some extent,
yeah,
or like animals that have, sadly passed away, and like how that affects you. It's just, I think the grieving and the mourning process is something I wouldn't wish upon my worst enemy.
No, I think it's knowing the right thing to say when someone passes away as well, and to the person that's grieving, we all get kind of struck with words, don't we? And we don't really know what to say. But I think the other person that's going through it just needs assurance that they've got people around them, rather than you trying to tiptoe and say the right thing.
Yeah, you're really right, because when someone passes away, saying there's loads of different things you just want, to say to comfort that person, and it's you're just treading on eggshells an awful lot of this. You feel like that anyway.
Yeah.
Even if it's someone just said, "Oh, my pet cat just passed away" or something, that person could be absolutely broken.
Yeah. It's that level of attachment you have to the person or animal or whatever that's dying, that really tells you how much they're going to grieve, because you could be closer to your pet than you are your family member. So it doesn't mean that it's wrong to feel more devastated that an animal's died, or feel just as devastated even.
Yeah, I had one of the worst days of my life was when my dog died. Like it ripped me apart. So it's like we got him in 2001, 2002. I think he passed away in 2016, I want to say.
Yeah.
Probably something like that. So I didn't have any brothers or sisters. I just literally had me, my mum and this dog. And it was kind of like when he died, we had him put down, we had him put down in the house. And when he died, my mind just blanked out.
Yeah.
It was a really, really surreal experience. I remember Mum taking me out for food with a boyfriend at the time, and I was sat down at the table, just staring into space. I couldn't hear people talk.
Yeah, you feel so detached, don't you, as well?
Yeah, I was just in probably a complete state of shock. And my mum was screaming, crying, an awful lot. We didn't stop crying for days. And I mean, he lived a long and prosperous and happy life, and it was just fantastic. And obviously, it was his time to go. He was not in a good way, and it was the most humane way we could have possibly done it. But even then, it's that feeling of that person or that animal, this specific thing or entity is not in your life anymore.
Yeah, and it's getting used to that, isn't it?
Yeah, and the shock that comes after removing essentially a part of your life or yourself is quite a traumatic experience.
I think branching off on, maybe we should start on this then, because I haven't experienced it, but the death of an animal, not to underestimate the value that has in someone's life. And I know I've often seen it on social media, and people they kind of make a joke out of it, like lightheartedly say like, "Oh, it's just a pet." Like, you shouldn't be that like, oh, get a grip kind of thing.
Yeah, it's one of those things where if you haven't experienced it yourself, you can't really. I suppose you can understand and empathize. It just depends on what type of person you are, and if you're empathetic. But if you're like me, my attachment to things is probably surpasses the average person and how they can get attached to things.
Yeah.
And when that attachment breaks or disintegrates, it breaks you inside, and you kind of have to remold your whole type of perspective on life and reshape it into something new. I suppose that's the way you could look at death. So something, because we all die at some point, like as morbid as that sounds. It's
inevitable.
It's incredibly morbid to think that, but it's inevitable. And I think the acceptance of that is the hardest thing, the absolutely hardest thing to do. I mean, if you look at it from a point of view of human society, right? So what do people want to do? They want to, basically, they're born, they go to school, they earn a living, they try and make a name for themselves, and they die. But what people don't often see is people leave behind statues, they leave behind something for their family,
or a legacy, or
because a legacy, that's right, mate. So people want, it's like people's egos want them to live on because they realize that their life is finite. Is it finite? Yeah, it's finite. Yeah. So everybody experiences to some extent death anxiety, and you're lying if you don't, because it at some point or another it will niggle at you a little bit. And I don't know if you felt like that at all, mate. Like having
of course, like I've had family members dying, and I'll talk about this as well, but like years ago my nan passed away, and I can't even remember how old I was. I think I was like 14, 15. And at that point, I know I was still like mature enough, but you don't really understand death, and you don't really understand that other people are affected by it. And like, obviously I was very close to my nan, like I loved her to bits and stuff, and may she rest in peace. But at that point I was attached to her, but I just didn't really understand that she had gone. And it was only like, it must have been like maybe 4 or 5 years ago that I started to think about it a bit more. And I realised that maybe I didn't handle the situation as well as I could have, or maybe I wasn't as supportive as I should have been, because my sister was affected by it like big time, and which led on to like other stuff. And I think what I'm trying to say is it comes with maturity, how to deal with death. So recently, 3 years this December now, my granddad passed away, and that affected me more than anything ever, because I was so close to my granddad. And when he passed, we were in hospital, we knew it was coming. It just doesn't make it any easier. And I think at that point I was at that maturity level of understanding that someone's going now. It's affecting my mum's life, my family's life, everyone's life around me. That's like a immediate family, I mean. And him passing in front of me, because he passed like in my hands basically, and he had his family around him, which was quite lucky that we got those moments. But I think it made me appreciate life more rather than thinking about death.
Yeah, that's a great outlook to have on it, mate. I'm sorry about that. That's but that's a really great outlook to have about it, because I think what a lot of people can do, and often not, you can be like this. So you can have the approach of acceptance, complete acceptance, and it's going to make you sad, and obviously there's the mourning process. Or you can just get angry and be like, why,
Yeah.
and just take it out on people.
In denial.
Yeah, that's it. So you dealt with that very well, and most people probably wouldn't.
I think, going off of what you've just said, that there are different forms of dealing with things. Some people get angry, some people get sad, some people don't feel anything and they become numb. There's no right or wrong way to feel after a death, and I think others around you shouldn't feel like someone has to cry for them to be emotional. Like, they can be inside them, they could be very sad and just not show it. Like, people put on a brave face a lot of the time, and not to judge how someone's grieving, I think, maybe.
Very true.
Because just like I was just saying, with my nan passing, I dealt with it like on the opposite end of the spectrum that my sister dealt with it. And but I was still grieving, I was still sad, I just didn't cry as much as I thought I would. But then with my granddad, I bawled my eyes out.
You are right, with maturity comes more acceptance of things. I had a distant cousin that passed away. I didn't know her too well, but I'm a bit of a crier, mate. I'm everything's on the surface with me, and I just bawled. And you are right. There's different ways of people deal with things. If someone's angry, let them be angry. If someone's crying, let them cry. You can't judge people for how.
And more times than not, if you do come across someone who's being angry while they're dealing with this grief, I bet you, if you just give it time, in a week or so, in a day or so, or whatever the time span is, they will come to you and apologise, because they're human at the end of the day. It's just the way they dealt with it.
I think the key word here is just accept pain.
Yeah, of course.
Pain is inevitable. Whether or not you yourself are going through it or somebody grieving is a horrible process.
It is. And I think as well, the key thing is that, as maybe this sounds not as compassionate as it should sound, but life does go on, and the sooner you kind of get to grips with the fact that the world is still moving, things are still happening, Sundays are still happening, Mondays are still happening, the weeks, like the days are still going past. It's just not having that person or animal or whatever the death was, having them in your life anymore. But the advice I've always given when I've had a friend pass away, or a friend's had a death, I've always said to them that they wouldn't want you to be unhappy. So
very true. If
they're looking down, whatever you're believing, whether you believe they will in spirit or whatever, they're going to be looking down, and they're not going to. If while they were alive they wouldn't want you to be unhappy, why would they want you to be unhappy when they're dead?
That's true, mate. That's incredibly true, because if I sadly passed away, I wouldn't want everybody to be upset,
No, of course.
I want people to be happy and celebrate stuff,
I think it's in a way it's the time to celebrate the life that person lived, and you remember them for who they were, not what they are now, like dead kind of thing. I think like some people, like say if God forbid, like I passed away, and my friends around me, I'd want them to remember me being like the lively person I am, rather than feeling like they've lost everything.
Yeah, that's very true. I think what we're not talking about here, mate, is, because obviously there's the traditional death. Death is death, right? People die. People die every day. What we're not talking about here is symbolic death of things. So what people might, especially young people, might not necessarily relate to actual hordes of people dying, like their friends and stuff. So my grandparents, for instance, they go to funerals every couple of months because they're getting old, and they realise that their friends are passing away all the time, and it's kind of a natural occurrence for them. So they're mature enough and they can deal with it. It's still sad, but what we're not really talking about is something to relate to young adults, young male adults especially, is symbolic deaths of things. So what I kind of mean by that is, if you've had a relationship and that's kind of died, if somebody, it could be somebody's personality is completely changed, and that's kind of
this is a
death of
very
a persona.
good point. Yeah,
it's like a death of that person. So it's a disintegration of your attachment to something which you hold dear.
I think it's also that relates to transitional periods in people's life, like moving job, you lose that kind of relationship with your work people, your work colleagues, moving house, you lose the detachment with the neighbours and stuff. And I know that doesn't sound as morbid as a physical death, but there's still grief to it. There's still like acceptance that you have to have that something's not the same anymore. I think that's the big thing. The big thing is change, and change is inevitable no matter what you do. You cannot stay plateaued at the same point the whole time, because things change.
I think I kind of had that when I left uni. It was almost like a very light-hearted grieving process for a little while.
Yeah.
You probably had it as well. You just moved from your old life to a new life.
It's kind of like I just said, like transitional period. It's like going from like 90% freedom, 10% work to 100% work kind of thing. Yeah. And you're going into adult life. And I know, obviously, even in uni, I'd have considered myself an adult, but you mature, don't you? And then you realise that it's just not fun and games anymore.
Yeah, and it's over.
Yeah. I mean, I used to say to people, oh, I'm not going to miss uni. I can't wait to be done with it. And I think it was like a good few months after uni had passed, I was like, shit, I actually miss the freedom, the social like activity that I had, and I just miss it all. And I guess it was a form of grievance.
Yeah, and it's very true. And yeah, I think that because you always have to transition. It's all about confronting the unknown, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's about breaking. So if you have someone die in your family, everything's in order, and then something breaks that change of orderliness, and it turns it into chaos, and it's kind of your opportunity to set that back straight into order. So do you know what I'm trying to say? So it's breaking that link of order.
Yeah, of course, and it's just moving forward as well, and getting used to the new norm.
Yeah, and that's really difficult to do in any circumstance, because life is really difficult.
I think the big thing is that you sometimes you can, obviously, if you know someone's passing or you know something's going to change in a certain set of time, you can prepare for it. But oftentimes they're not. We can't prepare for death. Like, you just don't know when it's going to come around. Like, somebody could be ill for 3-4 years or even 10 years and pass suddenly, or someone could just suddenly get ill and pass away like quickly. There's no, like, obviously I'm quite a religious person, so I always say God knows best, and God's planned everything out for us to the second. So everything happens for a reason, whether it's someone dying or whether it's you're transitioning into something else, or, you know, job changing. Everything happens for a reason, and it's got that domino effect. Like, if a certain death didn't happen, something else in your life might not have happened as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's just that preparation, but you just can't prepare for it.
Yeah, no, this is very true, mate. Should we, because we've kind of touched on the grieving process a little bit here, I've got I've got this link which explains the grieving process.
Yeah, go on.
And maybe if I list it out, people can relate to it. And if you do eventually experience it, because you will later in life, you can understand the process.
Yeah, I might even learn a thing or two here.
Yeah, so they say it's a 5-stage process, and the length of it is entirely down to the individual. So for some people, you might take like a week to get over it. So for some others, it could be up to 6 weeks to a year. It could be 10 years. That's something like that. I know people that haven't gotten over the death of someone for years.
Yeah.
Because it's just too traumatic.
There's no guidance to it, is there?
No. Everybody deals with their own personal matters in different ways, and that's totally fine. But you're probably familiar with this now. If you can tell me if you are, this whole process. So the 5 stages are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance.
Yeah, I'd agree with all of that, yeah. And it might even be specifically in that order, or they might come in certain stages. You might be angry for the first few weeks and then accept it later on and then get angry again. Like, they can just come hand in hand.
Mm-hmm. And that's very true as well. People are going to deal with it in different ways, massively. I remember when I was going through a process, I was definitely in denial first. Let's just look at it in the instance of my dog. I was definitely in denial first.
Yeah.
And then it went straight into depression. I had a little spells of anger. Bargaining, I'm not too familiar with, and then acceptance is. I believe acceptance is kind of the last stage, really.
Yeah, I think bargaining. Do you reckon that means like becoming like oblivious to things and just bargaining with your own life because you can't believe that someone else has died, so why should I be here, kind of thing?
Yeah, potentially, mate. Potentially. That would make the most sense, really. Sorry for the listeners if we're completely wrong. You can tell us if we're wrong, but that thing now said just makes complete sense.
I think it's just bargaining with the period of life you're going through now and just trying to, like, not really care so much for yourself. Yeah,
that's true. I think disbelief and confusion, they hit quite heavily, and there's going to be other physical symptoms as well that you can experience. So it could be dizziness, fast heartbeat, fatigue, headaches, nausea, shortness of breath, heaviness in the throat, chest, weight loss or weight gain, crying, that sort of thing. So it does have physical components to it as opposed to just mental, because your body, the thoughts that you have in your head, your body is always going to react in some way to those thoughts.
Yeah, of course. And it's just that, like you just said, I think you listed, I'm not sure if you did, loss of appetite.
Yeah.
Obviously, when someone goes through a breakup, someone dies, something traumatic happens, people can turn to one or two things. They can either comfort eat, and we talked about this in nutrition, or they can not have a complete loss of appetite and just forget to eat any meal any day. And I think it's important that if somebody's dealing with grief this way, that not to just hound them with like the fact that they need to eat, they need to do this. Just remind them that they've got to look after themselves. There's just a way of handling grief.
Yeah. And also, that leads on to my next point, mate. So they've got a section in here saying the path to improved well-being. This is the right way to get over grief. This is not grief over something, grieving over something which could be death. It could be anything. You know, you could have lost your job. Something traumatic has happened in your life and affected the process and the order and way in which things work. So the first thing they actually say, which is very true, is, and I think we've touched on this, is feel your loss. So it says allow yourself to cry, feel numb, be angry, feel however you're feeling, because it hurts and it's natural and normal.
Yeah.
So getting over that process, just allow others to feel that process. And, you know, it's perfectly normal to feel the way you are.
Yeah. There's no right or wrong way to feel.
Yeah, and if you feel nothing, that could be a mixture of things. That could be denial, that could be pure acceptance. You just don't know. People work in different ways.
I think just quickly, just want to say off of that some people aren't the type of people to dwell on things. So like you just said about people like acting like nothing's happened, that just might be how they accept things. They just be like, well, I've got to get on with it. There's nothing I can do to change it. So let me not let it affect my life now.
Yeah, that's very true as well. And because I am myself, I can be quite high in negative emotions. I can think quite deeply. I'm a quite deep thinker, and I can get a little bit too involved with things that kind of happen and disrupt my process. So I tend to overthink things like death quite a bit, whether it's to me or to somebody else. And I don't really appreciate that other people deal with death in that way. That they kind of accept it there and then. That's life. Get on with it. And that's perfectly fine if they accept things that way. That's people's process, and that's how they work.
I think it's just. I think I mentioned this at the start as well. Like, that say there's a family and they've lost someone, and within the family there could be 5 different types of grieving people, and someone could be crying and someone can be angry. But just because that person who's crying isn't angry, it doesn't mean they've not accepted it or they're not dealing with it. They're just doing their own thing. So I think it's just not to undervalue and to understand that someone can deal with it a completely different way to yourself. It doesn't mean they don't care, kind of thing.
This is incredibly weird, mate. I don't know if you've just been on your phone, but I've got a notification from our Twitter account on Just Mates Pod, and it says, "I just lost my dad today. Suddenly today, I'm beside myself with grief. I was with him less than 12 hours ago. I won't disclose who this is, by the way. And he was in the best form. He was one hell of a human. He didn't care how rich you are. Always tried to help people and was an amazing father and husband. Hug your nearest tonight." And that's something we haven't touched on. Is it makes you have an appreciation for life when. I won't disclose who this person is.
That is very strange, though, that's come up. I've just seen it myself as well.
That's really great. You see it on the notifications. Yeah. That's so weird.
I think
anyway,
what that person has done, whether that death was recent or not, they've accepted that the person that they've lost had an amazing life and was an amazing person, and appreciated their life for what it was. Rather than for how they are now, not with them.
Yeah, and that appreciation for that person at that time, and then you kind of do have a new appreciation for what. And
it helps you move forward as well. Like, I'm not going to say who, but one of my close friends. Nan passed away recently, and every time I've been to his house since, he's got a picture of his nan on his kitchen flat top, like the island in the middle. And I smile every time I see that picture. And I say that to him. I say, like, every time I see the picture of your nan, it just makes me smile, because I met her a few times as well. And he said the exact same. He said it's just to remember them for the happy person they were.
Yeah, that's beautiful, mate.
So, I mean, you don't have to not think about the person to get over someone. Like, you can still think of them in their happy moments and still feel happy. I think that what I'm trying to say is, if you catch yourself laughing after someone's died and you're just thinking about the happy memories, that doesn't mean you're not grieving, or it doesn't mean you should feel guilty that you're feeling happy, kind of thing.
Yeah, and you shouldn't pin, you shouldn't look at someone saying, "Oh, why are you not dealing with it the way I'm dealing with it?" Because that's the worst way, and that will make people question their own emotional structure.
Yeah, of course, and everyone's built differently.
Yeah, exactly. So let me just read off this path to improve wellbeing for grieving. So there'll be things that we've touched on here as well. So the first one is feel your loss, which you've just gone through. The second one is attend to your physical needs. So get enough sleep, eat a well-balanced diet, and exercise regularly, which we kind of talked about last week anyway, which you should be doing.
Yeah.
To circumstances. So yeah, if you want to learn more about that, I'd look at nutrition. It wasn't nutrition last week.
It was the week before.
That's it. The third one is express your feelings. So talk about how you're feeling with others, or find a creative way to let your feelings out. This could be art, music, or writing in a journal. So is the whole concept of transference.
Yeah, it's a form of therapy, isn't it?
Yeah, and this is what me and Naf preach to the choir every week. Talk.
Yeah.
Pretty much. Because what we're doing.
And some people, like you just said, art is an expression of emotion as well. So some people's drawings or the way they create their art could actually just express how they're feeling, and you might not even need to see words or hear words to know that.
Yeah, that's why so many artists, I believe, are successful. So
done with passion, isn't it?
Yeah, passion and transference. Saying how you're feeling and how you're dealing with the process. So if we look at this is a little bit different from outside of, I don't know, the music genre, but if you look at Jim Carrey, right, he went over a grieving process probably 10 years ago with his ex-girlfriend, I forget, something like that, his ex-partner, and he just started to paint.
Oh yeah.
And you'd never think of someone like that, an actor, would be a painter, but he says it. There is a little clip, or I can put it in the description, of how he's gotten over it, and he's got paintings all over his house. It's just there's nothing on the wall except paintings. It's mental. And creative arts. I mean, even Naf, you know me, I can't draw for shit. I genuinely can't draw or paint or anything for shit. But I often find, even if I just sketch how I'm feeling,
or even a doodle or something,
doodle can really help. And just having is that whole process of your mind to paper really helps.
Yeah.
Because you're transferring that negative energy onto something which you can either keep and store, or you could rip it up and throw it away. That's what I used to do. I used to feel bad about something, write it down, rip it up and throw it away. And the next one, right? Maintain a routine. Get back into your normal routine as soon as you can. Try to keep up with your daily tasks so you don't get overwhelmed. Routine is really important. Really important.
Yeah, I think that goes with anything that you're dealing with, depression, death, anxiety, anything really. That routine aspect is what keeps you going, and realizing that you've got to keep a hold of yourself. So, because like you just said, keeping on top of your eating and sleeping and stuff as well, that is a form of routine. So if you feel like you're catching yourself missing meals because you feel depressed, you need to slowly revert back to how you were before the death happened and just be the same person you were.
Yeah, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with your and don't be so harsh on yourself if your routine gets disrupted for, let's say, like a week, because it's only natural. You're not going to feel like you want to well, if you're anything like me, you're not going to want to do anything that your normal life consisted of.
Yeah, of course. It's because you're trying to adapt to the new reality, really.
Yeah, even I would actually advocate taking some time off for like a couple of days, and maybe allowing yourself to go through that process, and maybe break up your routine, take some time for yourself.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, some people can find work being distracting enough to help them, and some people might not like the fact that they need to focus on something, and they just want to be calm and collected and stay at home without anyone around them, kind of thing. But whatever way you feel like you need to deal with it, the other person, your work, your colleagues, your friends should accept that. There's no right or wrong.
Yeah, very true, mate. Very true. Next one is avoid drinking alcohol. We touched on this massively with Simon when he came on the podcast, but alcohol is a depressant that can affect your mood, so it can make you feel even more sad. I know if I've had a drink, I can get more reactive to more responsive to my emotions sometimes, and especially the morning after. Let's say if I'm hungover, I'll feel I react really weirdly to alcohol. I can get very depressed even like after 3 or 4 pints the night before. And yes, stay off the sauce, I'd say. And you can't really comment on it much, can you, Naf? But in terms of your experience, but you know almost as much as me that you should avoid substance abuse.
Of course, yeah. And it's not even just substance. It's like anything that you feel like you're going to be using to deal with and using and abusing, really. So like you could abuse your diet, like and overeat just because you feel like sad and angry. There's a level of control that you need to remain and have. Yeah,
that's very true.
I know it's not the same as drinking with the eating, but it's still a form of abuse, isn't it?
It's still kind of the same thing. It's the whole dopamine response thing to taking a substance or performing something. Look into what you're putting into your body before you resort to something as drastic as maybe downing like a bottle of vodka, because it's going to make things worse.
Yeah,
you have to sacrifice the short term for the long term in a lot of cases, and especially with alcohol. And I can tell you that with experience. Avoid this is a different one, Naf. So avoid making major decisions. It takes time to adjust to a loss and get back to a normal state of mind. Making an impulsive decision as you're grieving could add more stress at an already difficult time. Try to wait a year before making a big change. Obviously that's just a recommendation, like moving or changing jobs. I
think
when something has happened to me, I can get quite impulsive.
Yeah, I was going to mention that. Yeah.
Are you like that?
I don't think I am, but I know people that are, and I can understand it, because when you're in that level of grievance and sadness, you just want rid of, really, and you want a distraction. So say for example, like you just mentioned, a job change, someone dies and someone offers you a job in like a different city, without thinking, when you say if that person that you've lost it would still be here, you wouldn't have gone. But now you're just gonna not think about the situation and the circumstances. You're just going to go. You might end up regretting it. You need to give yourself time to heal and understand your thought process for things.
Yeah, I think that's very true, and I think the right way to say it is wait and evaluate. Maybe.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah,
that's true. Because I have caught myself. When something drastic changes to me, it's not bad impulsive, like making life-changing decisions, you know what I mean, like on a whim.
No, it could be something positive that sometimes impulsive decisions can make your future. But I think in the in the time of grievance, it's kind of just a bad idea.
Yeah, wait and evaluate.
Yeah.
Give yourself a break. Take breaks from grieving by participating in activities you enjoy. It's okay to not feel sad all the time. It's good for you to laugh.
Yeah.
I think you've touched on that before, mate.
Yeah, I think it's important to realise that you can smile and you don't have to be thinking negatively the whole time after a death. And that doesn't mean that you're not dealing with it or you're not unhappy about it. Obviously you're going to be sad, but like I said, you remember the good moments of that person or animal or whatever it is, that the good moments of that of their life. Mm-hmm. And if you're not going to reminisce the good times, then really that's you not grieving. You need to remember the good times to move forward.
Yeah, get yourself through the process and accept, and whatever you can do. I mean, this last point here, which I'll just touch on, is ask for help if you need it. So this is seek out friends, family, counsellor, therapist, support groups. And this is what we touch on every episode, is you're not alone. There's always someone to speak to, whether it be a professional or a close friend or relative. There's always someone to speak to, and just that act of actually discussing how you're feeling, having an outlet, is really helpful.
Yeah, definitely. And to hold on to it is probably going to make you feel worse in the long run, because you'll hold on for weeks and weeks, and then say you get to work and one day something triggers you big time, you'll let it all out, and you're just going to have a negative impact on people around you and the things around you. So in proportion to how you feel like you can, slowly just talk about things one step at a time. Maybe one day you want to talk about the person's hobbies and what they used to like to do, and start to remember those times. Maybe one day you want to remember, like, oh, they made me angry at this, I used to hate this, kind of thing. There's nothing wrong with that. There's just talk about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very true, mate. Very true. So that's the whole grieving process, Naf. That's pretty much everything in there, and I think there's quite a bit of there's a lot of information people can digest and take from that.
And we can understand that it might not be a conversation you want to hear, but I think just to understand there's different ways of grieving will help you in your life as well, and help you understand other people going through things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very true.
It's just like anything we talk about, it's hard to hear, but it's a conversation that needs to happen.
Yes, mate. Should we go on to the last bit of this pod? We kind of discussed this before we had a conversation, like before we started recording. Death anxiety. How do you pronounce that? The actual phobia. How do you pronounce it?
It's thanatophobia. Thanatophobia. Yeah. That's what it is.
I can never. Thanatophobia. Okay.
Yeah. So shall I just quickly read off what that is?
Yes, mate. Go for it.
So it says, thanatophobia is a form of anxiety characterised by a fear of one's own death or the process of dying. It is commonly referred to as death anxiety. Death anxiety is not defined as a distinctive disorder, but it may be linked to other depression or anxiety disorders.
Yeah. On Headspace, this mental health app, which is fantastic, by the way. So they've got a section on their website about death anxiety. I'll just read this little paragraph, and we can kind of feed off of each other when I read it out. So it's when Steve Jobs was dying from his terminal illness, I believe, he had cancer, didn't he? He said, "Death is the destination we all share. No one has ever escaped it, and that is as it should be, because death is very likely the single best invention of life. It's life's change agent. It clears out the old to make way for the new." It sounds really morbid, that, but when you kind of look at it, it's extremely philosophical, and I guess people can kind of find that quite hard to relate to. but it's the whole acceptance of that is the process, and that's what everyone goes through.
It's something that's inevitable. And I actually really like what he said there was to get rid of the old to make way for the new, or whatever it was. And as horrible as that may sound, like, you should never obviously think of like replacing someone or whatever, or like someone can't be replaced exactly, but you have to make way for a new change.
If you really think about it, mate, if we didn't die, would it would make, if you think about it in terms of time is our most valuable asset. Why is that? Because we all die.
Yeah, and we want to make the most of our time.
It makes death makes life meaningful.
Oh yeah, 100%. It makes you appreciate the time you do have.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get at. If you look at it that way, we all appreciate that because life is short. Make every day count.
Yeah,
because you don't know when shit hits the fan, do you? You really don't know. As horrible as it may sound, I think I've read a statistic, like, was it 1 in 2, 1 in 3 of us get cancer or something, or something could happen to you just out of the blue. Bloody hell, the sun could blow up. You just don't know.
Yeah. And you can't, or just for example, coronavirus. We couldn't predict for it. We couldn't plan for it, but now we know about it. Like, it just makes you appreciate things so much more. Like, you know, when lockdown started and we were obviously there were hectic queues outside Tesco, like 6 o'clock in the morning and stuff like that. At that point, we were thinking, oh, for God's sake, like, what is going on? But now we look back and think, now there's not as many queues. We think, well, I'm actually appreciating the fact that I can actually move outside. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. It's just the little things.
Yeah, the little appreciations, because people can just take life for granted. It's very easy to do that.
Yeah, it is. And we're not immortal. We're not going to stay alive forever. And as like morbid as we keep saying that sounds, it's true. Like, we're not going to be here forever. So let's not leave the world with any grudges or with any, like, realizing that we've upset people. We'll just move forward being a happier person and with good intentions. Really,
really true, mate. Really, really true. And meditation, I'm just reading on this Headspace. It says death anxiety. So the global anti-aging market is expected to exceed 292 billion by 2025. That should kind of just show you how the death anxiety affects.
Yeah, so many people don't want to look old.
People don't want to look old. People don't want to feel old. And they say here, obviously, because it's on Headspace, that meditation can really help with the acceptance of death anxiety. So maybe look on Headspace. This is a really good app. I can't remember how much it is a month, but I assume they've got, death, grieving, acceptance of death, different sections to help you meditate and deal with that process. So that would be good.
Yeah, definitely. And it might just be something that you need to see one day, and it will help you in the long run.
Yeah, that's really true. Okay. So that's pretty much the majority of it. I'd like to touch on something which I briefly discussed it with you before the pod actually began. I experienced death anxiety really bad probably when I was about 15, I'd say.
Yeah.
Because I come from I'm not gonna try and bash people for this. I'm really not. I grew up as kind of a textbook Christian. So I believe there was always there was always going to be an afterlife, blah, blah, blah. And then I went through a really long and difficult process where I kind of became atheist / agnostic. And obviously I'm unsure of what I became. It's that process of going from I'm sure of what's going to happen to me to I'm not sure of what's going to happen.
To being uncertain.
And I think that is something that's not spoken about enough, is the whole uncertainty going from because people, if you think about it, people are going, especially in Western society, they're going from assurance of an afterlife to people's mindset changing to perhaps not. And I'm not saying there's a right or wrong answer, because you just from my point of view, you just don't know, and I don't know.
It's all about your belief at the end of the day. And
exactly. And I know you've got a different belief from
I think it's just it depends on what you want to believe as well, because you could drill it into someone that something's going to happen after you die, blah blah blah, and maybe they just don't even want to accept that will happen. So just let them deal with it how they want to deal with it. For example, like obviously I'm a Muslim, so we believe that there is an afterlife, and the things that we're chasing in this world are so not worth it in comparison to the heaven and the things that you gain in heaven. Now obviously this is quite controversial, because not everybody's going to believe what I'm saying, but this is my own belief, and this is my religion and the core of who I am. Yeah, of course. But we obviously believe that when we die, we have angels on each of our shoulders that calculate our good and bad deeds. Yes. So obviously everybody's good and bad deeds are weighed out into the level of heaven they get into, or the level of hell they get. So obviously if you're a bad person, then you go to hell, and if you're a good person, you go to heaven. But even in heaven, there are levels of heaven. So there's the higher rankings of heaven, where there's absolutely everything that you could ever imagine, or there's the lower levels of heaven where you're still happy and content, but it's just not as good as the other levels. Oh, it's like a correct me if I'm entirely wrong here, mate, I don't mean to be disrespectful. So it's like a risk kind of reward scenario. So it's kind of yeah. So your rewards need to outweigh your bad deeds, kind of. And so kind of like a hierarchical positioning within heaven. Yeah, in a sense. And I may be wrong in how I'm saying it, but obviously if anybody wants to talk to me about it personally, I'm more than happy to discuss like my personal beliefs with them. Yeah. But yeah, that's what I believe, and that's why I will always preach about good intentions, because you could have done something completely terrible but not mean to, and that could not count as a bad deed. That could count as a good deed because your intentions were clear. Yeah, and that's really true, mate. And I think I really, really, really despise people that bash religion in any form, anyway, because there's a lot for every single religion in the world. It's done good in some way, shape, and obviously beliefs. And I think I've touched on this before. Nihilism, which you can kind of fall into quite heavily if you're an atheist. Nihilism is just you know what that is. It just makes everything like, oh, what is the actual point in life? And I think religion and beliefs having a structure, whether or not whatever religion it is, it can be quite beneficial. It gives you a purpose, and it gives you a guide to life, I think. And there's so many people that will look at like Islam and say like, oh, they're controlling you, and the Quran's saying this to do this and that, and like you should be able to do whatever you want to do. But it's not disallowing us to do good things. It's not disallowing us to be the way we want to. There's just like anything, like smoking, drinking, drugs and everything, there's just a level of control that you need to have. And that's what the Quran and our religion gives us. It gives us a level of control and guidance. I think there's this whole sense of
I think the right word here is judgment. If you just judge people and you're trying to ram your beliefs down their throat, I think that's where you can kind of draw the line. I think everybody should be able to believe what they want to.
Yeah, of course. And I'm not disrespecting anyone for who, if they're Jewish, Christianity, Sikhism, Buddhism, like you just said, atheist. I couldn't give a damn like what you are. I'm just out for the good intentions.
Yeah, exactly. That's really true. I think it's just so old school, isn't it? To be like, you don't believe it, therefore this is going to happen to you.
Yeah.
Placing fear and anxiety into people, and it's just like you just don't need that.
Or just even disregarding it or saying like, I can't believe you believe this, you're so stupid kind of thing. Just be a bit more respectful.
Yeah, I think so. It's not like I'm going, oh, Naf, what the hell? Why are you doing that? It's just
like,
let people bloody live. And like you, if you were born into, if you were born in a different country or like civilization, you might have been a different religion. If you were born into a different family, you might have been a different this. Like, just people believe let people live.
Pretty much just let people get on with what they want to get on with and let them believe what they want to believe. You do you and let them do them.
And that's pretty much it, mate.
Yeah, maybe we should cap it off there then.
Yeah, I think it's been a good one.
I think it's important that we talk about this as well, not even just on a podcast, but even, I know it's a horrible subject, but just like every so often, you should just talk to your friends about it. Like, so what do you think will happen kind of thing? Or are you sad about this? Just talk. So anyway, thanks everyone for tuning in, week out. We are on, I think this is episode 14, Sam?
Yes, mate.
I can't believe that we have done this every Friday for the last 14 weeks. That is madness, Sam.
That isn't even on the start of lockdown. That's like, what, halfway through or something?
Yeah, I can't believe it's been that long, honestly.
Well, let's hope we'll get to the next podcast and be back at work. Lol.
About that. Yeah, think positive. Anyway, this has been Just Mates. I've been Nafees.
And Sam.
See you later.
See you later. Bye.
Bye.